Some men destroy a dynasty with swords. Shakuni did it with timing, psychology, and a game that looked harmless until it was too late. He is one of the most unsettling figures in the Mahabharata because he does not charge at power from outside. He enters the weakness already living inside the Kuru house and teaches that weakness how to win small victories that create one enormous defeat. That is the first reason he matters. Shakuni understands that empires rarely collapse because one enemy is too strong. They collapse because someone learns how to organize their blindness. Dhritarashtra's attachment, Duryodhana's envy, Yudhishthira's vulnerability, and the court's addiction to status become pieces on a board. Shakuni's genius is not raw strength. It is his ability to turn other people's inner weakness into his working material. And yet the darker question is motive. Was Shakuni only clever, or was he carrying grievance so deeply that strategy became a form of revenge? The tradition around him keeps returning to that possibility because revenge explains his patience. He does not merely want to beat his rivals. He seems to want a house of power to expose itself, disgrace itself, and finally collapse under the pressure of its own choices. So this episode follows the method behind the man. How did Shakuni choose Duryodhana as his instrument? Why did the dice hall become his perfect battlefield? And what does the Mahabharata want us to learn from a strategist whose brilliance worked so well in the short term that it helped destroy everyone attached to it in the end? That is where the story becomes truly dangerous. The Mahabharata gives us enough to see that Shakuni's politics are personal. Gandhari's marriage ties Gandhara to a court already shaped by anxiety, hierarchy, and concealed humiliation. Whether later retellings intensify that grievance or not, the emotional truth is easy to recognize. Shakuni moves through Hastinapura like a man who does not fully trust the moral legitimacy of the house he serves. That distrust matters because it turns diplomacy into hidden war. But grievance alone does not explain Shakuni. Many wounded people never become grand manipulators. What sets him apart is that he learns how resentment can be scaled. He does not only remember injury. He studies who in the Kuru family can be trained to carry that injury forward. In Duryodhana he finds exactly what he needs: intelligence without inner restraint, pride without self-knowledge, and ambition hungry for permission. This is also why Shakuni is harder to stop than a loud enemy. Bhishma can detect open arrogance. Vijaya can diagnose moral rot. But Shakuni specializes in indirection. He does not always push the kingdom toward obvious crimes first. He pushes it toward habits of distortion, selective advice, emotional feeding, and staged situations where others will commit the visible act while he remains the intelligence behind it. That method reveals the real structure of his revenge. He does not seek justice in any restorative sense. He seeks leverage. And once leverage becomes the governing instinct, every relationship turns usable. Duryodhana is usable. Dhritarashtra is usable. Even the procedural dignity of the court becomes usable. That is the moment strategy stops serving order and starts feeding on it. From there, the fall of a dynasty becomes thinkable. Shakuni understands something fundamental about Duryodhana. Envy becomes strongest not when it only wants more, but when it cannot tolerate the legitimacy of another person. The Pandavas are not merely rivals to Duryodhana. They are living accusations against his entitlement. Shakuni does not calm that insecurity. He disciplines it. He teaches Duryodhana to interpret every Pandava success as theft, insult, and existential threat. This is why Shakuni's influence is more than bad advice. He creates a political atmosphere. Around Duryodhana he helps build a world where flattery sounds like realism, grievance sounds like principle, and escalation sounds like strength. Once that atmosphere forms, any moderating voice begins to feel weak or disloyal. Karna's loyalty, Dhritarashtra's attachment, and the prince's own pride become easier to align inside one angry system. That atmosphere also explains why wise men keep losing ground. Vijaya can still name the truth. Bhishma can still sense the danger. But Shakuni is operating at the level of emotional narrative. He is teaching Duryodhana how to feel about every event before reason can evaluate it. And once political identity is fused to grievance, argument becomes weak medicine. The mind stops seeking correction and starts seeking confirmation. And then comes the decisive step. Shakuni realizes that Duryodhana does not need to become morally right. He only needs to become emotionally irresistible to his father. Once Dhritarashtra keeps choosing affection over justice, the prince gains cover. Shakuni has now built a closed circuit. Grievance feeds ambition, ambition pressures attachment, and attachment protects wrongdoing. That circuit is the true board on which the dice hall will later be played. The dice hall is where Shakuni's strategic intelligence becomes impossible to deny. He chooses a battlefield where brute force is unnecessary and moral hesitation is an advantage. Yudhishthira can be lured by duty, honor, and weakness. Duryodhana can enjoy the spectacle. Dhritarashtra can pretend procedure is being respected. And the court can sit inside a disaster while telling itself it is only watching a game unfold. That is the brilliance and horror of the design. Shakuni does not need every participant to be evil. He only needs each person to remain weak in his own special way. Yudhishthira remains inside the trap. Dhritarashtra delays intervention. Bhishma does not break the structure. Vijaya protests but lacks command. Strategy at this level is not about overpowering everyone. It is about arranging a scene where each person's flaw does part of the work for you. And when Draupadi is pulled into that hall, the strategy reveals its final nature. This was never only about transferring wealth or humiliating rivals. It was about publicly breaking the moral legitimacy of the house itself. Once a royal court tolerates that violation, revenge has reached its highest form. It has turned the victim's disgrace into the aggressor's deeper corruption. Everyone watching is now stained by what they allowed to continue. This is why the dice hall is both Shakuni's masterpiece and his indictment. He wins the room, but the win is poisonous. He proves that strategy without moral limit can force a short-term victory so humiliating and so total that reconciliation becomes almost impossible. At that point revenge stops being clever. It becomes a machine that will keep running until the entire order around it pays the price. After the dice hall, Shakuni seems successful. The Pandavas are humiliated, the Kaurava faction looks dominant, and fear has replaced balance in the court. But the Mahabharata measures strategy by a harder standard than temporary control. Does your intelligence create an order that can survive? Does it deepen legitimacy? Does it prevent the next disaster? By that standard Shakuni is brilliant in execution and catastrophic in outcome. His method strengthens Duryodhana's certainty while weakening the kingdom that certainty hopes to control. That contradiction is fatal. The more Shakuni helps the prince win against rivals, the less moral space remains for the dynasty to hold itself together. Every manipulated success increases resentment, narrows options, and makes compromise look like humiliation. A strategist can sometimes trap his enemy so well that he also traps his own side inside an unwinnable future. This is why moral limits matter even in the language of power. Vijaya sees it. Bhishma feels it. Krishna later acts with that deeper horizon in mind. Shakuni does not. He is consumed by tactical control. He knows how to trigger weakness, but not how to heal a realm after weakness has been exploited. He can accelerate breakdown, but he cannot build trust once the sacred fabric of the court has been publicly torn. So yes, Shakuni changes history. But he changes it in the way poison changes blood. He moves quickly, invisibly, and effectively until the whole system starts carrying his work inside itself. By the time war becomes unavoidable, his strategy has already done what revenge wanted most. It has made the Kuru house unable to save itself from the consequences of the very victories it once celebrated. So how should we understand Shakuni? Not as a cartoon villain, and not as a misunderstood genius who simply played the game better than everyone else. He is the Mahabharata's warning that intelligence can become predatory when grievance takes command of it. A wounded mind may learn to read weakness brilliantly, but if it turns every relationship into leverage, its victories will eventually carry the shape of ruin inside them. That contrast becomes clear when we place him beside Vijaya and Krishna. Vijaya uses intelligence to warn. Krishna uses intelligence to restore moral balance under extreme conditions. Shakuni uses intelligence to intensify weakness until collapse becomes inevitable. All three are strategic. But only one turns strategy into a parasite feeding on trust, law, and family. The epic is not anti-intelligence. It is anti-intelligence without dharma. That is why Shakuni still feels relevant. Every age produces people who can identify fractures faster than anyone else. The real test is what they do next. Do they repair the crack, or do they widen it because destruction promises advantage? Shakuni chooses the second path. He teaches us that the smartest move in the room can still be the most self-destructive move if it trains a whole system to live by humiliation and revenge. So remember Shakuni as more than the man with the dice. He is the strategist who proved that revenge can look like intelligence long before it reveals itself as ruin. If this episode helped you see the Mahabharata more deeply, like this video, subscribe to EkalavyaLearn, and turn on the bell icon so you receive the next story on time. The next question in this chain is just as sharp: why Krishna's last peace mission still failed before the war?